Hey, Ian here, and I'm old enough that this song basically runs on loop in my head all the time.
Pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time.
Yep, I'm talking of course about one of the most famous and catchiest ad jingles of all time, the Bagel Bites theme. In recent years, a bunch of people have discovered that this song, much to their horror, was not actually original. It's based on a song from 1957 sung by these sisters from Middletown, Ohio, that goes something like this.
Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, sugar at supper time. Be my little sugar and love me all the time.
That's Sugar Time by the McGuire sisters, and for 90s kids like me, it sounds pretty darn familiar. But what if I told you that the roots of this song actually go even deeper, back 150 years or more, back through ragtime, rockabilly, romanticism, and beyond? What if I told you that the Bagel Bite song may stem in part from a rhythm transposed across an ocean and translated by some of the most renowned composers of the 19th century? That it's all one big, giant conspiracy, man. Okay, forget that last part. It's just pizza on a bagel. It's still a pretty cool story about how music ideas spread. Let's start with the basics, the part you might already know. The melody we're talking about is this one right here.
Pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time. When pizza's on a bagel, you can eat pizza anytime.
As any kid from the 90s will remember, this ad first appeared on TV in 1996, giving a whole generation permission to eat pizza anytime they want. But as already mentioned, most of the melody and the lyrics were lifted directly from this song, Sugar Time, written by Charlie Phillips and O.D. Eccles in 1957, and performed by the McGuire sisters. Quick aside, have you ever wondered why this song says both evening time and supper time in it? Like, isn't that kind of redundant? Well, it's from Sugar Time. Apparently in the 1950s in the American South, it wasn't that unusual, especially for farmers, to come in from a day of work and have a really big dinner, and then later after dark, have a light supper. Anyway, the McGuire sisters' version of the song actually hit the top of the charts in February 1958 and led to a host of other versions. British singer Alma Cogan had a hit with it later in 1958. Johnny Cash did a version that climbed the country music charts in 1961. Linda McCartney did a version. At one point, there were even two competing Swedish versions out at the same time. And then, of course, you have the Bagel Bites version.
You can eat pizza anytime.
Now, this version isn't really a cover song because, well, the entire second half of the song is decidedly different. And it's different in a way that's perfect for marketing bite-sized pizzas. If you line up the lyrics according to where the words fall in the measure, you'll notice that the word pizza lines up on beat 1, the strongest beat of the measure every time. It's almost like they wanted the word pizza to stick in your head. Let's focus in on this descending melody line right here, because this is really what it's all about. This is the catchy part, and this melody has a pretty interesting history. Sugar Time isn't the first time this melody appears. For one thing, there's a Chico Marx song from 1933 called I'm Daffy Over You, which sounds pretty familiar. But going even further back, we can hear that melody again in this piece. That is the Habanera in E major, Opus 83, from 1887, written by famed French composer Camille Saint-Saëns. But it's basically the same thing. It's a triplet figure here, so 3 notes of equal duration instead of 4 16th notes. And it uses the 7th scale degree for this note in the melody instead of the 6th. But that's not a huge difference. Here are the two melodies side by side, transposed to the same key so we can compare. They both start on the 5th scale degree and walk down to the 5th scale degree an octave below. They both have these 8th notes at the exact same spot at the end of each phrase. They both walk down in pitch at the same moments in the measure. And the second half of the Habanera melody even sounds, to my ear at least, a little closer to the second half of the Bagel Bites melody. Slightly? Anyway, you heard it here first. The Bagel Bites jingle was actually written by French composer Camille Saint-Saëns. You're welcome. But wait, there's more. The differences between the Saint-Saëns melody and the Bagel Bites melody point to potentially an even earlier origin for at least the rhythmic part of this melody. Now, the Saint-Saëns piece Habanera was inspired by an Afro-Cuban rhythm called a Habanera, one of the rhythms most often associated with the tango. Now, the Habanera can appear in a couple different forms, but it's perhaps most recognizable like this. That is in fact the highly recognizable Habanera aria from Georges Bizet's famous opera Carmen, first performed in Paris in 1875. Carmen was considered a highly provocative opera at the time, with critics being scandalized by both how it broke conventions of the operatic form and for its heroine of dubious morals. In fact, this aria from Carmen has been used as a theme for vice and seduction in pop culture ever since.
Just like I stated, she's overrated. A big no-brainer with enormous feet.
I'm not sure the Bagel Bites marketing people knew that. And it's this piece that inspired Camille Saint-Saëns to write his version of a habanera, the Havanese. Check out the melody of the Bizet piece. It's also descending. It has some triplet figures in it, just like the Saint-Saëns piece. It has those prominent eighth notes in the same spot as the original melody. And the second time through, it even descends the full octave, just like the Bagel Bites theme. What if we make a version of the Bagel Bites melody with the habanera rhythm, just for fun?
Pizza, pizza zero, pizza more vicello.
That's good stuff. But we can go even further because Bizet himself admitted to taking this melody and rhythm from a Basque composer, Sébastien Iradier. Forgive my pronunciation. Iradier had published a very similar melody in 1863. Apparently, Bizet thought that it was a traditional folk melody, so he was okay to use it, or at least that's the excuse he told when confronted about it. Now, Iradier had actually spent some time in Cuba before writing this piece, hence the habanera rhythm from Havana, Cuba, that has worked its way through this story. So here's what we have. A Basque composer visits Cuba, brings back a popular rhythm that he uses in a composition. French composer Georges Bizet incorporates it into an operatic aria that becomes famous for seduction. Then Camille Saint-Saëns writes a piece inspired by Bizet's version, but puts the melody into a major scale form. That melody then floats around in the early 20th century before being commercialized by the McGuire sisters, Johnny Cash, and all the rest, before reaching its ultimate form in a popular jingle advertising tiny bagels that have tomato sauce and cheese on top of them that kids can eat anytime. Whew. And there we are. I mean, I think the really cool thing about this story is that it's a narrative about musical authorship and influence as it gets passed down the generations. Now, I'm pretty sure the Bagel Bite people who wrote that song weren't thinking about Afro-Cuban musicians from the early 19th century when they did it. And yet, that influence is still there in this piece. And that's kind of amazing. Now, I don't know if I'd call the Bagel Bite theme great music, but at the end of the day, great music is so often made by taking familiar patterns and putting your unique spin on them, leaving your link in the chain as it continues on down the line. That might be something to keep in mind the next time you get too caught up worrying about originality in your work. Or just take a moment and appreciate this incredible heritage you're part of every time you make music. Time for a Bagel Bite. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're enjoying the videos we're making, then please come by the Soundfly shop. We're creating some t-shirts. We've got a cool calendar, some mugs, and some other merch that you can pick up to support what we're doing, help us make more great videos like this.